very enthusiastic ones.
Right.
Yeah. And me too.
Yes, we have that same experience here in Portugal, Eva. We have the majority of the candidates sit for the FC exam, and then we have less and less at C1 and C2. But surprisingly, we have a lot of students interested in the IELTS exam. Does anyone here teach the IELTS exam?
Well, I don't. It's we are a smaller town, let's say, but in Novi Sad, I guess, and Belgrade, yes. So I'm in a provincial town, and people usually tend to migrate to Novi Sad, and then there they take the exam.
Thank you very much, Eva. I am so happy to be here with you. We will learn a lot from you today. I'm super excited about that.
Okay.
Good morning, Lucy. Nice to see you.
So, Lucy, can you hear us?
No, I don't think she can hear us.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah. Oopsie. No problem. No problem. Okay. Anyone else? Anna. Good morning, Anna. We have two Annas here. Good morning, Anna. Would you like to share? Hi, good morning, Anna. How are you?
Great, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning. Can you share your experience with us with regards to the FC exam?
Well, I've been teaching English for 14 years, I think. And for the past 6 or 8 years, I've been preparing my students for various exams. Last year, I had a group that went to FC exam, and I don't know, it was a bit challenging for them. Actually, during the lessons, they found the listening part most difficult.
All right.
Yes, I don't know why, but in the end, when they took the exam, after the exam, they said that the reading part was actually the most challenging for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
For sharing your experience. Right. I don't know what the tolerance time is in Serbia to start.
It's like 15 minutes.
Sorry?
We joke that 15 minutes is like an acceptable way, but let's not use all 15, okay? Because quite a lot of people actually registered already. Let's just check if Lucy can hear us, because she's experiencing obviously some problems, some technical issues.
Lucy, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
The camera is not working. I don't know. I mean, the camera's working on one and I can't hear anybody, and then on the other I can hear everybody, but I can't. You can see me, but I can't hear anybody. Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't. The camera's not coming on for some reason.
Okay.
Okay, so
the joys of Teams.
Yeah. Could I just officially start? So first of all, hello to everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. As you already know, our topic is your writing skills at B2 level. I wish to start by introducing officially now the presenters and the organizers. So a very warm welcome to our presenters today, Angie Oliveria and Lucy Bravo. Hello.
Hi,
welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you today with us. Also, I wish to introduce my friend and colleague from Cambridge University Press, that's Oliveria, the owner of Blackbird Language School. Hello, Ljuba.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today. Thanks.
And for those of you, yeah, sorry, Luba. Yeah, and for those of you who do not know me, my name is Yulkita Nadlachki, and I'm a Center Exams Manager at Excalibur Exam Center from Novi Sad. So before I leave the floor to Lucy and Angie, I just wish to ask you for a moment of silence because we had a tragic accident yesterday here in Novi Sad. The roof collapsed at the railway station, and a lot of people have tragically been killed. So if it's okay, we would start with a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, so thanks a lot. I'm sorry to have this introduction, but it is what it is. Dear ladies, the floor is all yours. Okay.
Lucy, would you like to start?
Can you hear us, Lucy?
Lucy, we can't hear you. Lucy, we can't hear you.
So, Angie, could you take over, maybe?
Yes, certainly.
To begin with, yeah, and
Lucy,
then
if you could start sharing the slides, I would appreciate that. Can you do that, Lucy? The PowerPoint presentation. Right. First of all, I'd like to express my condolences and sympathy for the tragedy. We were unaware of it here in Portugal. Yes. Okay, so to begin with, I'd like to ask you all just to look around and find something that you would take with you on holiday. It can be anything, all right? Just 10 seconds, look around where you are and just pick up something that you would take with you on a holiday, okay? So I would take a pen. Julia, what would you take?
Sunglasses.
Sunglasses. Do you have sunglasses with you?
Unfortunately not.
But you're dreaming. That's good. Eva, what would you take with you on holiday? Eva Banku, what would you take with you on holiday, my dear? Nope.
Perhaps we can use the chat box and then just...
Yes, maybe you could use the chat box and just write down things you would take with you on holiday very, very quickly. Okay? So, Julia, here it says you can't send messages because you are not a member of the chat. You need to...
Okay, I need to... Yes, I will.
So that we can communicate, please.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Ivan, what would you take with you on holiday?
I take a book, I would take a tablet, a towel. Those are all things around me.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much. Right. So, first off, I want you to keep what you said you would take with you very close to you. And Lucy and I today have prepared a very, very simple PowerPoint presentation on how you can go about acing your writing at B2. We today are only going to focus on part 2 because obviously we do not have time for parts 1 and 2. And so we chose how to write an article and how to get a 100% on an article. The reason why I chose articles, because I'm sure, as you all know, the articles are pieces of writing that you can find in the PET, FC, CAE, and CPE exams. So it's something that the students are very, very aware of and usually choose as a easy option in the exam. So as you all know, this exam is 1 hour and 20 minutes. So usually we encourage the students to spend 40 minutes on part 1 and 40 minutes on part 2. You all know that the writing is between 140 and 190 words, so stick to that as to not complicate it. It's really important to remember that Miss Lucy and I are sharing our experience with you. I've been teaching Cambridge Assessment for 30 years in Portugal, and Miss Lucy, I'm sure, a lot longer. How many years, Lucy?
About 30. About 30.
Okay.
Since 99.
Okay, so very important to remember that this is not the right way, this is our way. This is obviously something that I have done and I have trialed with my students and I saw the results. As I think it was, I don't remember his name at the beginning, said that writing was also the most challenging part of the FC exam. Well, here in Portugal, we experience the same thing. The kids usually ace all of the parts, but they usually struggle with the writing. Hence the reason why I started to put all my expertise and all my knowledge and brainstorm and pick Miss Lucy Bravo's brain to help me prepare this. And we've come across errors and misunderstandings and misinterpretations that if we look at carefully and if we apply them correctly, can in fact result in an A for your FC students. Lucy, would you like to say anything before we move on to slide 2?
Well, firstly, to apologize, my camera's not working. Wait, I've just admitted somebody by mistake.
No, that's okay.
That's
perfectly fine.
Firstly, thank you for being here. Julie, thank you for that opening, especially remembering those who have suffered a loss, which is always tragic, but hopefully, as Angie said, for time's sake, we can only really do one part of the writing today, but hopefully it'll help you with all of the other parts. So I'll hand it over to Angie, and every now and again I'll take over. But as Angie says, these are things that have been tried and tested, that we've created training on. But for time's sake today, we can really only cover the article. And I hope you enjoy the session.
Thank you, Lucy. If you could move on to slide 2, Lucy, that would be awesome.
Let me try. Let's see if this works.
Oh, it will. Okay, so very important to remember, as an invigilator of these exams for many years, what Lucy and I have experienced is on the day of the exams, the kids are extra nervous, and what we as teachers practice in class doesn't in fact happen on the day of the exam. I'm not sure if any of you, Julie, is anyone here an invigilator for Cambridge exams? Are you aware of that?
We have one lady here who used to work as an invigilator and supervisor.
Okay, superb. So feel free, please, whoever you are, or if anyone has any other experiences, to please share it with us. So as invigilators, obviously, when it comes to the writing part of the paper, the students are explained very, very clearly and very, very meticulously about what needs to be done. Okay, so the invigilator hands over the answer, the answer booklet and the question paper. And the booklet where they have to write their answers to be handed in, that is sent then to Cambridge to be corrected, is in fact a booklet that opens, and it has a section for part 1 and a section for part 2. Okay, this is the only part of the exam, as you know, that is written in pen, and that is a problem. Reason being is that the students read the question and pick up their pen and start to write, and it is a tragedy. Reason being is because they don't plan, they don't think before they write, and they start to make errors. And what do? They start to cross out, but very untidily. They don't put a line through and bracket it. Then they realize, oh, oopsie, I've run out of space. So they turn the page over and they start writing, make more mistakes, start crossing out lines, forget about the paragraphs, and then put up their hands and say, can we have another booklet? I made an error. Well, that is a train wreck because the students' attention won't have time to rewrite. The students are more nervous then, and they haven't listened to the invigilator. So what's important for them to remember is that the question paper that you're given can be used to write on, and you can write your plan there. And when you transfer to the booklet, on the top it says part 1, and you write your obligatory essay, and you move to part 2, where there is a box where you have to select the part 2 you have chosen, whether it be a report, a writing of a letter, an article. You need to write the number in the box and then continue. And write neatly, because this is going to be corrected by someone that's not your teacher, and they have to be able to read. If they can't read, you will in fact fail your exam. Well, that part of the paper. So before you even start teaching your kids about how to ace a writing, you need to explain those simple instructions to them. Miss Lucy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I do. In fact, a few years back, and it's really important for, I always tell students before they start the writing exam, if I'm invigilating a room, I spoke to the senior examiner at Cambridge, who's senior examiner for advanced, and she said one of the main issues they have with the writing, making it completely illegible, which means it will have a huge impact on the student's result, is, I don't know about if you have the same habit in Serbia, but in Portugal, there's very much, students don't plan, so they write in pencil, and then they go over in pen when they feel comfortable with what they have. And then they rub out the pencil. The problem is, in Cambridge, I've been to the DC-10 warehouse where all of these exam papers are dispatched to and marked, etc. All their papers go into a scanner, and this scanner is very, very, it picks up everything. So what it does, it picks up the pencil, it picks up the pen, and it picks up the rubbing out. So it makes the work impossible to read. And as Angie said, and rightly so, if their writing is untidy, it can actually cost them a whole band in terms of the organization and the mark in itself. So we need to be really careful. There is a way around this, and when I questioned this, they said if the students' writing is better in capital letters, they can actually write the whole thing in capital letters, but making sure that the capital letters that should be at the beginning of a sentence, for example, are bigger than the rest of the other capital letters. So just a word of warning on the answer booklet. They also cannot write outside those lines for the reason of the scanner only scans inside those lines. So anything that's outside that line, those lines will not be scanned, which will make the sentence perhaps not make sense or incomplete. So another word of warning about the answer booklets.
Thank you, Lucy. So first thing you should encourage the students to do is to underline the most important parts of the rubric, okay? So the question itself. Students read, they see articles, they pick up their pen and they think, right, don't need to plan, I know how to write an article, let's go. You need to know what to include in the article. As I've said, 40 minutes, listen to your invigilator, use your question paper to make the plan, write in pen, forget pencil and then going over, do it in pen, write the correct question that you have selected in the box at the top of the page, and off you go. Miss Lucy, please.
Okay.
Next slide.
I did.
Oh, there you go. Now you've, yes. Again, Luce. So make a plan, and in the plan you need to refer to the question that you underlined, okay? And here, the plan itself, and we have, Miss Lucy, in fact, the next slide will show you, it is divided into 4, which is, in fact, the 4 components that need to be covered. But it's super important to remember, and I think us as teachers, this is where we go wrong. When we see range of language, we have the tendency just to focus on vocabulary. And we forget that we've been teaching our kids for years all this beautiful grammar, yeah? The reported speech, passive voice, conditional sentences, all the verb tenses, modal verbs, inversion of subjects. However, we don't encourage them to use them in the writing. We always go on about using incredible vocabulary. Avoid monotony. Use a variety. Don't use repetition. But you, in fact, forget about the grammar. So make sure that when they are thinking about it, they must also think about a variety of grammar and vocab, okay? Then they need to move on as who the target reader is. Who is going to read my writing? Because that will decide if the writing needs to be formal or informal, okay? Please remember that there are 4 parts of the marking criteria, and the organization, the layout and structure is equally important. So you must pay as much attention to your vocabulary and grammar as you do to your global achievement, your language. Everything that is included in the marking criteria has an equal weight. So everything is equally important. When I have students at the end of the exam, candidates, I should say, when I'm invigilating, say, oh, I forgot to write paragraphs. Is that going to be a problem? Number one, we cannot answer the candidate's queries, okay? But more importantly, of course, if you've forgotten to write paragraphs, it will reflect in your exam because the organization means that there is not a clear introduction, development, and conclusion. So you will be penalized, okay? Miss Lucy, would you like to add anything here, my dear?
I don't know to what extent the weighting is for the CEQs, which are your key to proficiency. But I can give you an idea of how important paragraphing is when it comes to IELTS. I was an IELTS examiner for many, many years. And as you all know, organization, it's also broken up into 4 categories. And one of the things in organization was paragraphs. Now, those of you who are familiar with IELTS will know that it goes from 0 to 9 in each category. Just to tell you that paragraphing, if there were no paragraphs, the student for organization could not get higher than a 4, which means they would fail. So word of warning about paragraphing is so important. I'm going to move on to the next slide to talk a little bit about planning. As a teacher, I started to get frustrated with the fact that students don't plan. And I started thinking to myself, how can I process or how can I make them think of the planning process in a much easier format that will be quicker for them to actually process the whole information that they have to do before they start writing. Because I think students are under the impression when you tell them to plan, you expect them to write everything out, write down all the points or whatever. So I came up with a strategy, and this came up, I would say about 8-9 years ago when I was training some advanced students to do an exam. And one of the students says, planning is such a pain. And I said, all right, let's see if we can make it slightly easier. So I came up with the next slide, which basically shows you, and sorry, there seems to have moved, things seem to have moved on the slide. You'll see language there has the ease shifted. So basically I said to them, I said, I need you to just draw on an A4 piece of paper, just four, divided into four, one right content, one right language, one right communicative achievement, and one right layout. And all they have to write here is things that they have to remember, not actually write, you know, an inversion or write a modal. They just need to make a list in terms of language, inversion, modals, conditionals, idioms, things that they need to, and this should become rote. This should be automatic. You should do this for every single writing. So when it comes to exam day, they're so used to doing this that it becomes automatic. So they'll divide the page and they'll put content. They'll look at the question, and Angie said highlighting the points is very, very important. And I'll give you an example of my national maths exam. By misreading one word, I lost 21 marks. So the importance of reading the script is essential, and this needs training. Then they write down the notes. Then they go on to communicative achievement. What register do they need? What is the function of the article? Who are they informing? Complex ideas, simple ideas. So just making a note of all of these things that they have to include. So it's not actually answering the question, except for content, which is more specific to that question, but it's really just giving them a general idea of everything they have to include, and not just in the article. This is pretty much in all of their writing. So as we said, we're focusing on the article, but this layout and structure of planning works for everything. So all they really need to know is when they get this, when they do the 4 categories, communicative achievement is always going to have those 5 points. Language is always going to have 5 or 6 points, and then layout will always have those points. So another thing that we need to be very careful of, and this was brought to my attention once again by a senior examiner at Cambridge, is the overuse of linkers. We need to be very careful. We go on about using linkers, but the overuse of linkers can also be not a positive impression on the reader. So just a word of warning. But this layout, if they remember this, the only one that really changes for any of the tasks is the content. And they just need to literally remember the rest. It's rote learning for those, and they just need to, what is the register, what is the function? And when they're going through the piece of writing, they just sort of tick these off, and it's included, it's done, let's move. So this is the importance of planning, making sure that they include everything that they should include in a piece of writing. Over to you, Angie.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Could you kindly move on to the next slide, please, Lucy? Yep. Okay, so as we told you, unfortunately, we only have time to focus on the articles this morning. And the most important thing when looking at an article is to create an engaging, interesting, thought-provoking title. Make sure it is clear and relevant to the topic and not long. So the title, I do a lot of practice in title writing. I give my students topics that are related to the exam. So for example, identity, technology, communication, environment, and I tell them, right, I want 5 titles related to environment, let's go. It can be used as a warmer in the beginning of your article writing, get them into the habit of doing something that is engaging, that arouses interest, okay? No one wants to read a boring article. And that's what captures the reader's attention. So make it short, make it thought-provoking, so that the person, the target reader that is correct is going to think, wow, surely this has to be interesting because the title is great, okay? Then, with regards to the introduction of an article, the most important thing to do is to engage with the reader, as though the article was being written specifically for them. So you need to use the personal pronouns that The person feels that they're being involved in the introduction of your article. So start with rhetorical questions, a surprising fact, an interesting statement to grab the reader's attention, okay? If the title is superb and you move on to a first paragraph where the person feels as though no one's talking to me, I can't relate to this, they won't want to read it. So it's very important to include the rhetorical questions as though the person reading thinks, oh, wow, the person's talking to me. You are grabbing the attention of the reader. Then briefly introduce the topic and what the article will discuss and keep it short. Set the tone for the rest of the article. As we have said, if it is formal, keep it formal. If it is informal, keep it informal. But the tone should be set right in the very beginning of your article. Paragraph 1. Miss Lucy?
No, I don't really have very much to add here, with the exception of, I think, and people are going to kill me when I say this, I don't know if your students have access to their phones during class, but I think a really good exercise here is you give them topics for different articles and you ask them to use ChatGPT to come up with a good, catching, rhetorical question, a surprising fact, or an interesting statement that they could start it off with. Because what this will create, it will create, and basically you just need to put a prompt in. This, I'd have to write an article about blah, 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 blah. Give me 10 great titles for this article and 5 good rhetorical questions that I can start the article with. Very simple prompt. But I think what it will start creating in our students is the fact of how things can be done, the type of language that can be used, and exactly what is a rhetorical question, a good rhetorical question, and a good title, a catchy title, because very often they can't think of these things. But if you do this over and over and over again, this will become automatic for them, even if you set it as homework. If you don't use computers in class, phones in class, etc. But I think, this is where we can use AI to our advantage and to the advantage of students by showing them good samples of these different things.
Thank you, Lucy. Could you move on to the next slide, please? Right, so what I like to call the development or the body of the article itself. So remember, you're looking at 2 to 3 paragraphs. Clearly states the first main points you want to discuss, provide examples, reasons, personal experience to support your ideas. Use the linkers. Firstly, begin, for example, to ensure a smooth flow and natural flow from one paragraph to the other. It is very important that it is a natural flow. If the target reader and the person that is going to correct your article feels as though there is rehearsed speech or things are being used out of the correct context, you will obviously be marked down. It is super important as teachers not to give your students lists of all this incredible vocabulary and grammar and linkers and so on, and then not show them how to use it in context. And remember that we, who corrects these articles, knows when something isn't natural, when it seems very rehearsed. Even in the speaking part of the exam, it's very easy to see if you've got 20 candidates all from the same school using the same idioms and the same proverbs. So it's super important that what they use is well used. The variety of grammar and vocabulary obviously is encouraged to avoid repetition and monotony, but don't use rehearsed speech or something you don't know. Success requires practice, and practice makes progress. So help your students to use whatever you give them in class and make sure they understand it, they believe it, so they can pass the message on and engage with your target reader. Miss Lucy, would you like to add anything?
This rehearsed speech issue is something that is recurrent. I mean, Angie and I both know of a school that does this, and they always complain about the results of their writing. And they've reached out to see how we can help. But just to give you an idea of rehearsed phrases, again, coming back to my IELTS training and examiner experience, anything that was rehearsed or that we could see was rehearsed on a scale of 0 to 9 wouldn't get higher than a 2. So just to show you the importance of, they need to know how to use the language flexibly, the idioms flexibly, etc. And when it fits in, it needs to fit in as if it was near natively written. It can't be forced. And examiners can see when it's forced. They have enough training and enough experience to spot this. So it should really be avoided at all costs. They need to know these things, and they need to just know how to use them. Coming back to the variety of vocabulary and grammar, again, if you do the planning where it shows them the different types of grammar, etc., that they should be using, that tends to give them the variety. The vocabulary, be cautious with repetition of vocabulary, because it's very, very common, especially at first, to use the same vocabulary over and over again.
Thank you, Lucy. Could you kindly move on to the next slide, please? Right, so in the conclusion, the paragraph 4, remember you need to summarize the points you've discussed, offer your personal opinion or a suggestion if appropriate, and remember, the way you start, you need to finish. So with a memorable closing statement that leaves a lasting impression on the reader, so that the target reader thinks, right, mission accomplished. You could also end with a question to keep the reader thinking about the topic, or even use humor. It is all permitted, all right? Super important to remember. If you're going to start off with a bang, end with the bang too, all right? And please, this is something we've told the students. We know we tell the students, but even before the day of the exam, you want to encourage them to check their work for accuracy, punctuation, and spelling. With regards to the USA and the UK spelling of words, remember, if you're going to spell, for example, traveling. In fact, our article today that we're going to write is about traveling. So traveling with 1 L is British, American English, and traveling with 2 L's is UK. So if your students are going to start with American English throughout, so they spell color with no U, neighbor with no U, traveling with 1 L, they need to maintain that throughout their writing, because otherwise the examiner might think, right, this student does not know how to spell. They're using American spelling, they're using British spelling, and it confuses the person, whether the person's in doubt whether they know how to spell or not, okay? We have spoken about this again, but we cannot alliterate and tell you how important this is. So important. Write neatly, make sure your layout is well done with paragraphs. With regard to the paragraphs, you can leave a white line between each paragraph, or you can indent. Both are 100% accepted in the Cambridge exam. So encourage your kids, leave a white line or indent, but that has to exist if you want to ace your FC exam. With regards to the amount of words, please make sure if they're doing a paper-based exam that they count their words. If it's a computer-based exam, the words are counted for them. And remember, if your students write more, they will have the tendency to do what? To go off topic and to make more mistakes. So encourage them to keep to the word limit. If they want to write an extra 10 words, that's okay. But I've seen candidates that in fact have written much more. Cambridge is not obliged to read it, and if your punchline, if your incredible last statement, the memorable sentence of the article is in line 250, it will not be corrected. So it's important to encourage your students to count their words. Miss Lucy?
Yeah, can I just add to the use of humor? You can use any sense of humor. That's not a problem. And actually, it's actually quite a relief sometimes, even as a speaking examiner, when you have students with a sense of humor. However, be very careful with anything that's discriminatory, because they will not get a mark. It's as simple as that. If they put anything in the articles or even in the speaking, if they say anything that's discriminatory, their mark will be withheld. So be very cautious of that, or even using inappropriate slang. As far as the word count goes, of course, Cambridge will mark the whole thing. However, the more you write, the more mistakes you make. It's as simple as that, and that will have an impact on the overall grade. It's inevitable. Okay.
Thank you, Lucy. The next slide, please. Right, so this is where we stop talking and you start getting involved, okay? So can I please ask someone to read the rubric for this article? A volunteer, please. Anyone?
There, I will read it. Okay, so it says, articles wanted. You've been asked to write an article for an online travel magazine. Write us an article about your best traveling experience alone. Explain why people choose to travel alone, what the advantages and disadvantages of solo traveling are, and would you recommend traveling alone to others? The best articles will be posted on our website.
Right. So in the beginning, thank you very much. That was great. In the beginning, I asked you, please, to find an object that was close to you that you would take on holiday with you, correct? And Julia, you said you would take sunglasses.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Would it be appropriate to include your sunglasses in this article?
Well, as a detail, why not?
Exactly. And how could you include it?
Well, I like traveling to sunny countries, and I would definitely need my sunglasses on to enjoy the view.
Exactly.
And it's a good thing, because if I were a solo traveler, that could help me deal with perhaps some anxiety with being alone on the journey.
Superb. So you could also use a conditional there. So if I were to travel to a hot country, right?
Exactly.
So you've used a variety of language, you've used a variety of grammar, and you have made it a appropriate content part of your article. So bingo, you did good. So very, very important to remember that whatever you use, whether it be a pen or the sunglasses, that it has to be related to the article. Remember, if it is in the rubric and you've underlined it and it is appropriate, you must use it, okay? Now here, there are 3 things that we need to include in our article. Can I have another volunteer to please remind us what we need to use? Everyone's shy this morning. Everyone's sleeping. No one?
Okay, the 3 things are to explain why people choose to travel alone, to say what the advantages and disadvantages of solo traveling are, and if I would recommend traveling alone to others.
Okay, so as Lucy did her layout planning in the beginning, we would then obviously have to include that appropriately under the content, because that is the most important thing to remember, excuse me. And once you have put that into context, you will see how easy the rest of the planning would follow on, okay? Lucy, next slide, please. So, here it goes. Have you ever thought about packing your bags and heading off on a solo adventure? Briefly introduce the topic of solo traveling and its benefits, okay? Paragraph 1, discuss the freedom and independence that comes with solo traveling. Example, talk about traveling alone, allows you to set your own schedule and follow your own interests. So, Miss Lucy Bravo loves to travel, and Miss Lucy usually travels on her own. So, Lucy, could you give us some ideas from your personal experience with regards to paragraph 1?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the reason I like to travel is because I'm an avid photographer. So one of the reasons I travel, and one of the things that always goes with me, is my camera. My camera is the only thing that's indispensable in my bag. Well, unless you're traveling to Sicily, which everything gets left in Rome. I've just been on a trip to Sicily where I got my bag when I was coming home for 5 days. I had 5 days without any clothes, without anything. So it was great fun. But solo travel, the freedom and independence without a doubt. It allows you to set your own schedule. I do what I want, when I want. I do, I don't have to drag anybody along because I want to go take photos of this or take photos of that. So the freedom and independence also comes at a cost, of course, but it is, I think traveling alone is something everybody should do once in their lifetime. You grow so much personally, and you challenge yourself because you've got nobody else to help you.
Thank you, Lucy. Can you move on to the next slide, please? So focus on your personal growth and self-discovery that solo traveling can bring. Share a story about how you can overcome challenges. So Miss Lucy already went ahead because she's such a good FC candidate. She went on to explain why she thinks everyone at least should travel once in their lifetime on their own and overcoming the challenges. She even spoke about how she lost her bags, and obviously you had to overcome that challenge. Correct, Miss Lucy?
Alitalia lost my bags, not me.
So, with regards to summarizing for the conclusion, so paragraph 4, summarize the benefits of traveling alone and end with a question or a call to act on. For example, so what are you waiting for? Oopsie, the R is missing. Isn't it time you booked your solo adventure? Okay, so this is what I told you. Start with a bang, end with a bang. Miss Lucy, next slide, please. Right, so this is the part that I think interests all of us, okay? I have simplified this into a teeny tiny little slide about the marking criteria itself, which, as we've said in the beginning of the session, was divided into content, communicative achievement, organization, and language. And Miss Lucy's plan, the 4-square plan, covers this too. And this is something that I, as a teacher, use all the time. But I also give this to my students to use so that they are guided. And I also show them the differences between using complex and simple, using more difficult and easier language. And Miss Lucy has 2 documents where we have actually written down the type of rhetorical questions we expect. We've written down the type of grammar we expect. And we've also gone on to do a marking criteria where you've got how to achieve a band 5, a band 3, and a band 1 that nobody wants, right? So it is step by step. It shows you exactly what is expected, what is needed to ace your FC, but in a more detailed way. Okay, with regards to language, as I've told you, where I was going wrong with my students is that I was concentrating on too many linkers. I wasn't emphasizing the importance of using all this beautiful grammar we teach our kids through the year. I was just giving them all this wonderful vocabulary to use. So, for example, Miss Lucy spoke about traveling, taking photographs. I would go on to say, it was a breathtaking view. I could not resist. But I forgot to tell them, if I had my camera, passive, reported speech, inversion of subject, modal verbs, include that in your writing too. Content, make sure you cover everything that is asked of you. Communicative achievements, engage with language to make the article enjoyable and a memorable read for the target reader, who in fact is going to correct it. Organization. Clear paragraphs, ensuring that there is a logical progression from one idea to the next. So here you need to use your linkers, but don't overuse your linkers. There has to be a natural flow. And remember that this is done in 40 minutes, more or less, give and take, on a separate piece of paper, in pen, so write neatly, plan it before you start it. Miss Lucy?
I don't really have very much to add here, with the exception of language. Language is probably the area at first, advanced and proficiency that has the lowest in terms of the 1 to 5 category. If you look at examples that Cambridge have out, and CAE is particularly bad because I think students think that they can go from first to CAE without really doing, because let's face it, most students can do first fairly easily, but they think they have the same, they have to do as little to do CA1, and they can pretty much get by with it, and they can't. C1 is a completely different ballgame in terms of grammar and vocabulary, and that's why very often the language, you will find 1s and 2s are very, very common in the language at C1. The issue here with language is that students don't read. The ones that do read, you will notice in their writing. So either incorporating reading into your class or getting readers where they can share, you know, you have a class set of various readers where students can then use them, and because it's the problem with reading the same author all the time is that they will get the same vocabulary all the time. I always warn my students from B2 upwards that if they're going to read, they need to read a variety of authors, precisely because of not getting locked into a specific set of vocabulary and grammar. So I'm sure you have access to good readers, and I would highly recommend that reading becomes an integral part of the writing, because without it, it's very, very hard to get them to the level that they need from B2 upwards.
Thank you, Lucy. Could you move on to the next slide, please? Right, so here you in fact have got the breakdown of the content, communicative, achievement, organization, and language. The scale is from 0 to 5. Remember, this can be found in the handbook, I should say, on the cambridgeenglish.org site. After teaching for 30 years, I still correct with this open because no, I do not know it all. Yes, I'm still learning. And so for me, it is of the utmost importance to have this open, and for me to be able to use this, to apply this well by giving my kids feedback. I very seldom correct errors because I like to encourage self-correction. Monkey see, monkey do. If they, in fact, take the time to correct their own errors, I will just underline the error, they will learn from it. Very few students will, in fact, read over what you have corrected. But if you encourage them to now rewrite that and please self-correct, you will see a huge difference. So it's super important to have your writing assessment subscales for B2 available to use and abuse. Miss Lucy?
You see you have the QR code on the screen, and here if you just scan that.
I'm sorry, I just need to interrupt you for a second. Sorry, Lucy. In case the video stops and the meeting is finished, I've sent you all a new link. Okay. So just for all the teachers to know that you can use the new link for us to basically normally finish this webinar. Okay. Thank you.
Good. All right. So I think this guide is very, very useful for teachers. But just looking at the assessment subscales for the B2 first, I just want you to look at for a 3, so minor irrelevances. So making sure that nothing in the piece of writing shouldn't be there, because that'll drop them to a 3 immediately. So making sure that irrelevances are not an issue. Omissions, of course, if they leave out one of the content points, they will get a 3. Irrelevance or misinterpretation of the task completely. And this is where we come back to making sure you've read and underlined the key